All right, we're ready to rock and roll. Coaches coaching, coaches coaching. I still think that's the greatest name we've ever come up with anything, ever. Okay, guys, so we're on the rookie call this morning. Very excited to be here. I've got a couple of the master trainers, specifically Thane Sharp is on here this morning. We're going to be talking cueing. Different types of cues. Once again, this is my cell phone number I'm sharing with you guys, 801-419-9433. I'm sharing it for two purposes. One, for this call, and for you guys to be able to send your first and last name so I know you were here and I can report back to your head trainer. The second reason, if you got any questions, concerns, anything like that, you now have my cell phone number. So my name is RJ Rice. I'm the director of fitness training for Vasa Fitness. Anyway, so we're rock and rolling here. So we're talking cueing. So Thane, to kind of start, I wanted to kind of give these guys a little bit of background on cueing. You know, basically what we're talking about with cueing is a cue is essentially an instruction to your client, right? So as we're training people, we give them various types of cues: internal cues, external cues, tactile cues, you know, a number of different cues. So what we wanted to go through and talk through is different types of cues, why we do what we do, and talk through that a little bit. So with that being said, Thane, do you have anything to add to that before we get into it? I wanted to maybe just start with one movement and then we can kind of go from there. But anything before we get right into that?
You will find out that if one cue isn't working, you have to have multiple. So if one client gets one cue that you say, they will get it. And if you try to say it to another client, they won't get it. So it's just important to understand and steal cues from other people.
And the other thing too, guys, just so you're aware, Thane is the master trainer out in Colorado. So those that are in Utah that maybe don't know who Thane is, that is who Thane is. Just I forgot to introduce him. Excuse me? You have a comment?
Also known as Shrek.
Also known as Vasa Shrek. If you need to find him on Instagram, at Vasa Shrek. Shrek is his Instagram handle. Okay, so is there a particular movement you want to start with, Thane, or I was thinking maybe deadlift or.
Yep, that's fine with me.
Should do that? Okay. So I'm gonna, let's see here. You able to see me? Yeah. Okay. So if I were coaching a deadlift, right? And I were coaching one of our clients on it, I'm going to give some various cues for them to begin. So we're going to pretend for a moment here that this stick is the top of a kettlebell, right? So I've got a kettlebell on the ground. This stick is going to represent the top of that kettlebell, right? So as I'm coaching, so I guess Thane, why don't you coach me through it, and then we'll talk cueing. So why don't you pretend like you are coaching me through a deadlift? Give me a couple of different cues that you would give me, and then let's go through it.
I'm not able to see you. I'm currently driving to Denver.
No, I know. No, I got you.
Okay. So I gotta make sure. Okay, never mind. Okay, you're gonna make C's with your hands and place them on your knees, almost like a ready position.
Okay, great.
And you're thinking locking those lats down, keeping your shoulders back.
Okay.
Now, from that position, I want to take my hands and slide them on top of my knees or on the inside of my knees down to the bell. And I'm thinking, grab the bell. So you can see what he's
talking. I'm going inside my knees. And once again, I've got my bell here, my pretend bell, and I'm grabbing the bell. Okay, got you so far? I'm in position.
Okay, and then at that point, you're just looking to see if they're set up properly. Are the hips back? Do they have the proper joint integrity to look and pull that bell up. So as he pulls up, he's going to make sure that we're going to look at his ankle, knee, hip are all lined up as he pulls up, and he flexes his butt as he comes up.
Okay, so looking at it, a couple things. So all the cues he's given me are what type of cues? Internal, external?
External and internal.
So he's giving me internal and external cues. So what's the difference between an internal cue and an external cue, Thane?
External cue is I'm going to actually verbalize, tell you this is what I need you to do. And internal is I am making sure what I'm telling you is actually happening.
Okay. So basically, if I'm looking at it, and Lane and Nick, I know you guys are on, so you guys are welcome to chime in at any point. But basically, what we're looking at is internal and external cues, right? We're looking at what are we telling them, and what are we telling them to do, and how are they responding to it, right? And then we're watching them as they're going. So he's giving me cues. So one of the cues he gave me, for example, was he wants me to bring my shoulders down, what we call break the bell, right? So when I break the bell, I'm going to break the bell. I'm bending. I'm essentially breaking this bell, right, this handle, and my shoulder's going to rock down. Well, now I've got to make sure as a coach that that's happening. So if that's not happening, then I've got to make some adjustments to make sure that it is happening. Is that making sense? Somebody has a comment. I can tell.
Hey,
somebody is.
Can I clarify one thing?
Please. Yep.
So an internal cue is essentially you cueing what's happening inside the client. So if you said squeeze your lats, that's happening inside the client. That's internal. If you said squeeze your abs or flex your glutes, all internal. Okay. When RJ, yeah, so you're cueing what happens inside the client. The problem with internal cues is most clients don't know how to do that. So when you say break the bar, like RJ just showed you, break that stick, you're going to engage the lats without knowing how to engage the lats. It's just going to happen. So you're cueing the result. That's external. Okay? So break the bar, screw your feet into the floor. Those are external cues. And that's the main difference, cueing what's inside the client versus cueing the result that you want to get.
That's a good way of putting it. I like that. Lane, great. So like you said, I can tell a client to squeeze their butt cheeks. They might not know how to do that, right? But I bet if I put a pen in their butt cheek, they would squeeze their butt cheeks, right? Is that kind of the way you're describing it, Lane?
Yeah, or crack a walnut.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So once again, the reason he brings that up, and the reason we're bringing this up is because lots of times when we're training people, we think, okay, I'm just going to tell someone to do a plank, right? You might say, I might go, okay, front plank. Here's what we're doing. We're going to lie down on the ground. Elbows are underneath shoulders. Feet are on the ground. I'm taking straight angle from ear to ankle, and then this is what ends up happening, right? So I want this, right? This is what I'm looking for, and this is what ends up happening, right? So now I can sit and tell the person all day long, get your butt down, get your butt down, get your butt down, right? That would be considered, which one would that be considered, Lane? Internal, external? But I said, get your butt down in a plank. Come on, Lane, where'd you go?
He's just, I think he's muted or something.
Sorry, I was muted. I switched to my computer. That would still be internal. You're cueing what's happening inside them. Yep.
Right, exactly.
Internal are not as effective.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so internal is me telling you to do something internally, right? Me now getting you and taking that same person, for example, and putting a foam roller between their legs. Okay, that would be considered what? Putting a foam roller between my legs would be considered what?
That's now more external and kinesthetic or tactile.
Kinesthetic, tactile, right? So now I've got something to use to put in between my legs for the plank, right? Is that making sense?
And the core's just going to turn on its own instead of saying, squeeze your abs, keep them tight.
Right. And this is important to realize, because one thing that I had this conversation with a client just the other day, actually. I had somebody kind of get upset with me because to them, I was not coaching them properly. I was not telling them something. They were doing a goblet squat, and I had their heels elevated. I had them going to a box, and I had them doing a counterbalance with a weight, right? All of those things. So we're changing gears here a little bit. Sorry, I know I'm moving fairly quickly, but we want to get this point across. So if I'm doing a goblet squat, right? Let's say this is my box. I'm going goblet squat to box. Okay. I had her heels elevated. I had the box, and I had a counterbalance. All of those are what type of cueing? Tactile, right? Or external cues, right? I was basically coaching her without her even realizing it. Okay. And she got upset with me because she felt like I wasn't coaching her enough. And so I had to connect the dots, and I had to go, hey, look, see how your heels are elevated on those little 2-inch plates, or 2.5 pound plates. See how you're going to the box. See how you're doing a counterbalance. That's me coaching you, right? And that's me working on your movement without you even realizing it. Is this making sense? So let's do this. Let's pause for a second. What questions do people have? Because I know there's got to be questions. If anybody's even awake.
I don't have any questions, but I just have something to add real quick. It's just basically what you're saying is the less we coach, the less we have to coach, the better coach we are. Because if we can get them in the movement without us sitting there yelling at them to get into the movement, then we're doing our job.
Yeah. And that's, so what we're talking about, the internal versus external, the tactile, right? We're trying to find, when we're cueing, just like Nick is saying, we're trying to find the most effective and efficient way possible in every single movement. Because one big thing that we've always got to keep in mind is group training. Right? If I'm constantly training 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, the more that I'm having to do as a coach on an individual basis, the worse off and the harder and the more difficult and the worse off I'm going to be as a coach. Because I'm constantly having to do everything for everyone, right? But if I give people things to work on, and I give them external cues, and I give them tactile cues, right? I can be able to go, let's take a deadlift, for example, and hip hinge pattern, right? I can sit and talk to somebody about rocking their hips back, right? Or I can say, hey, why don't you get next to a wall, get off that wall about a foot, and now I'm going to take my butt and I'm going to try and drive my butt back to that wall in my deadlift, right? I don't have to do anything. I can just say, hey, stand here, try and get your butt back to that wall, right? Now they're able to sit and coach themselves. Same thing if I had a stick on a deadlift, right? I take a stick behind the back, place it here, right? 3 points of contact, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm here to here. Okay, and now I've got this teaching tool to help me as a client in my deadlift without even having to have a trainer there. Okay, so what questions do we have on what we've talked about concerning cueing? And while we're waiting on somebody to ask a question, the next question I've got for this group, intern-wise, is what movements are you guys having hard times with in regards to cueing? We can talk through some of them. Let's see here. So Lane, internal cue, the client focuses on what is happening with his or her body parts and how they move. Mrs. Jones, squeeze your abs. External cue, the client focuses on affecting his or her environment. Focus on the outcome of his or her movement. No questions? Seriously? Must have all the answers in this group. I had no idea. We got a bunch of experts.
Well, like Thane was talking about too, it's so much easier when you have a crap load of cues in your tool belt, because not everybody is going to hear the exact same thing and get into movements that you need. So if you only have limited amount of tools, then you might get part of the group into it, but not all of it. If you have multiple tools, then you find the best cue for the majority, but then you have tons of different things you can just go, quick, this is my change, and get them into the movement you want. Because again, otherwise you're just sitting there yelling at them, trying to get them into what you want.
Yeah.
So
and what I would say
Batman tool belt.
Yes, exactly. And like you said, that you want to utilize whatever works. Everything's going to be different for everybody, right? So we talk constantly. As master trainers, we have conversations all the time. On how do we improve somebody's hip hinge? How do we improve somebody's squat? What are you guys doing to do X, Y, and Z? And we're constantly sharing ideas. When I was in town in Colorado, Dane was giving me stuff on kettlebell swings, that he's been working on with his people. There's no one size fits all. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. And you take a deadlift pattern once again. You've got the hip hinge part of it. You've got the back staying straight. You've got the knee staying over the ankles. There's a lot of different things that need to happen. And so you've got to be able to have a couple different ways to help work each one of those to get them into the right position. At the end of the day, how I evaluate how good a trainer is how well their client moves when they're not around.
We have a great question in the comments.
What are some good cues to help with arched lower back in push-ups or a plank position? Okay, so when you say arched lower back, you're talking, and we can talk through both of them. So we're talking here, if they're doing a push-up, are you guys able to see me? Oh, I gotta move that now. Sorry. So when you say arched lower back, I'm assuming you're talking either this or this, one of the two, either way, correct? How about you guys want to give some cues? I've got a bunch of stuff, but Thane.
Usually I'll just go right into in that low back arch. I'll just start touching it with a pen and say, do you feel this? Do you feel this? Bring this up, bring this up, bring this up. So they actually know where their spine is in space.
Got it. So using tactile cues, touching their spine and going, okay, do you feel that? And having them raise from there, right? Another way we gauge is foam roller between the legs, right? If I've got a foam roller between my legs and I'm squeezing that foam roller, it's a challenge for me to arch my back either way. So if I'm truly squeezing this as tight as I possibly can, it'll help maintain that plank position. Another one you can do is taking bands, hanging a band up. So if I were to take, here, let's just go downstairs. We're going to go into the ISIS safe house here. I'll show you what I'm talking about.
While you're doing that, RJ, the other thing you want to do, guys, is cue their breathing. Cue very forceful exhales. Exhale, blow out your birthday cake. Exhale, blow out dandelion. The more they're engaging a forceful exhale, the more they're going to use their core, and the better the back position is going to be.
Yep. And I would say one thing I would say is you had mentioned push up. I would try and correct it in the plank first before push up, just because when you're adding a push up in, now they're having to add that extra element. So you can see here, I've got a band, stretch band here. I'm going to take that band, I'm going to place it around my hips here, right, and do my push up from that point, right? So that's a way to help get those hips up in alignment, right? So you got a couple ways there: squeezing, getting that there. I have trouble with people coming up on their toes with lateral squats. How do you help them keep their heels down? Perfect. Okay, so lateral squats. Okay, so did that answer the push up?
Wait, RJ.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, so when we're talking about cueing, if they don't get it in, for myself, if they don't get it in 2 to 3, then I'm just going to regress them down, because either I'm not communicating to them what I need them to do, or they just can't do it. I'm not going to spend a ton of time setting them up, and when I got a group going on. So
no, you make a very valid point, and that's something that's important, because part of what we've got to realize is, yes, form is important. Yes, getting them in the right position is important, but at the same time, too, they need a workout, right? So if you are literally sitting there and you're constantly just cueing them and coaching them, and the person never actually moves, that's a problem. Okay, so make sure. So Thane brings up a good point. If what you're doing does not get them into the right position within the first 2 or 3 reps, then we need to change gears and go to another one. Okay. So the question is, how many cues do you give before you need to regress? So once again, I would say what I would look at from a coaching standpoint is, if I give you probably, let's say I coach you through it, let's take a goblet squat. I'm going to come back to the lateral squat question, by the way. But let's take a goblet squat, right? I show a goblet squat, right? I demonstrate it. The client comes and does it. They do 2 or 3 reps. It's totally off. I go and I cue it, right? I give them 2 or 3 more reps, okay? I would cue it one more time, and then at that point, then I would go to regress. So what I would look at is somewhere around 2 cues and 2 reps, right? That's a fairly simple way to look at it. Go, okay, I'm going to give them 2 cues and 2 reps per cue to kind of get the movement. If I can't do it, then I would regress. Is that a fairly good rule of thumb, guys? I guess we've never really put a standard on it, but I think that's kind of.
Essentially, they're getting 3 attempts to try it, and then if they can't get it in 3 attempts, and then you've changed your approach, it's not that they don't want to do it, it's that they can't, and you need to regress.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a matter of, it's a mobility thing. It might be a neuromuscular thing. There's a lot of different factors that play into it. But Thane brings up a great point. When in doubt, just regress. Right, that's a simple, easy way to look at it as well. Is if you feel like you've given it, 2 cues, you've tried 2 different things, then at that point, then we would regress. Okay, hopefully that helps. Okay, so one of the questions was lateral squat. So basically, what the question is when we're teaching a lateral squat, and this is a fairly common thing is as they're going, what they'll do is they'll get in that lateral squat and they'll get onto their toe, and so from the side angle, they'll get onto that toe and they'll kind of be in that front position, right? So they're kind of like this type of action. I don't even know how the hell they do it. Anyways, so how do you fix that? How do you keep them on the back of their heels? Couple things is obviously cueing, staying on the heel. Another thing is making sure they're not stepping into it. Sometimes we have people step into it. When you add that element of stepping into it, makes it a little bit more difficult. So starting with the feet wide and then having them go is one way, kind of slowing it down. Another way is same thing as the deadlift. Give them something to be able to tactilely touch, right? So what I'll do, same thing, put them a foot off of the wall, right? Have them go back and have them touch their butt to that wall. Right? Go ahead. So did somebody have something? Oh,
I just said give them a target.
Yeah, give them a target, right? So I'm here, and I'm going to put them against a fence or against a wall. Now I want you to try and reach your butt back. The other thing is reaching. When I now reach in that lateral squat, when I reach, I'm able to get that counterbalance to get that butt back. If I put a little weight in their hands, you know, a small weight, 10, 15 pounds, 5 pounds, probably more like 5 to 10 out here. Now I've got that counterbalance to get that butt back. Hopefully that helps.
I had just one more thing to add for you. Just kind of adding on to yesterday's conversation, we were talking about bringing energy and personality to groups. This is a perfect time to do it. I just know like a lot of the coaches that we follow, they have awesome cues that's easy to remember. Like Dan on a hard style plank will say, squeeze your knees together like it's Utah birth control. Or Brendan's got a great one to squat to a box, and he's like, kiss it like you'd kiss your sister, not like you kiss your wife. So you're not sitting down on the box and you're just touching. But these are things that clients remember, and it's adding personality to it because they're just like, they kind of laugh about it, but it's easy to remember. And then you just added something to the group and got them into the movement that you wanted.
Yeah. Let's see here. Erica had another question. I have a client with really tight hamstrings. What are some other good exercises they can do besides leg lowers with a band? Toe touch progressions is a great one. Leg lowers. What's the one I'm thinking of right now? I can't think of. Oh, what is
the reset?
Inchworms. And the other thing I was going to say is reset. One of the best things, guys, we've kind of been dabbling in RPR, reflexive performance reset. And I'm only going to share this with you because this is a simple one. You asked about hamstrings, Erica. RPR is something that we're doing a little bit of, but all it is it's literally a neuromuscular reset, doing a bunch of different things. The one for hamstrings is basically you're taking kind of this V right here in your low back, and you're basically rubbing down that V, right? So I'm basically rubbing in from the top of, you can see here to here, kind of that V at the top of my glute, and then down. So that's an easy one to be able to do with your client to get their hamstrings. What I would do a toe touch with them, have them go touch their toes, do that reset, and then have them touch their toes again. You'll see literally in 10 seconds, you'll see a difference. If that didn't make sense, please let me know. Okay, so Antonio's asking, so external cues are better or easier to do than internal cues? Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah. In a nutshell, yes. You want to look for external cues as much as possible. Lane just put, yeah, more effective because many clients don't understand the internal cues. And the reason is because if you don't have, what he's talking about is if you don't have an understanding of your body, which most deconditioned people that are coming into the gym do not have an understanding of how to control their body, how to control their spine, how to control their glutes, right? If I say tighten your glutes, they don't know how to do it. If I say, tighten your core, brace your core, they're not going to know how to do that at first, right? And so that's where the external cues come into play, right? I can say brace your core, or I can say I want you to exhale as far as you possibly can, as much as you possibly can. Me exhaling, just do that right now. If I exhale and I go to the point where I'm losing my breath, completely losing it, my core is bracing just by doing that one movement, right?
RJ.
Yep.
One of my other favorite examples on this is cueing a push-up. Many clients will lose integrity through their thoracic spine. They'll just collapse, right? And you could cue them and say, hey, I want you to pack your shoulder. I want you to tighten up your shoulder girdle. I want you to, and they're going to just look at you like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
hey, I
what
want
does
you
that
to
even mean?
lock down your lats. They're not going to know. But if you tell them, hey, Mrs. Jones, you got oranges in your armpits, okay? I know that's crazy, but think about it. Oranges in your armpits. Squeeze the oranges, Mrs. Jones. Make some orange juice. Yeah, there we go. And then do a push-up. She's going to do every single thing you wanted her to do without realizing that you just taught her how to pack her shoulder and lock her lats down. You just told her to put freaking oranges in her armpits. You cued the result, and good things happened.
Yeah. And using the example that I think Nick talked about on the goblet squat, you know, what he's basically talking about is if I'm doing a goblet squat, and what Brendan coaches is what a lot of people will do when they're doing a goblet squat to a box is they'll sit down in it, right? Well, when I sit down into that box, that's not what I'm looking for. This is what you'll get, kind of that rocking motion, right? So what was the cue you gave, Nick?
Kiss the box like you'd kiss your sister, not your wife.
There you go. Kiss the box like you would kiss your sister, not your wife, right? So if I was going to kiss my sister, it's going to look like this, right? It's not going to be a long kiss and I'm sitting there with her, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to tap and I'm going to go, right? And that's what we're talking about. The more that we can do that and give them things that they can relate to, that they can have an understanding. I can imagine an orange in my armpit and squeezing that orange, right? I've never done it, but I can imagine it, right? I know what that would feel like, right? But I don't know what it feels like to pack my shoulder down. But little do I know that squeezing an orange and packing my shoulder down are the two same things.
And then once you do that, once you do a good external cue and they did it right, then like RJ was saying earlier, go back and connect the dots. Hey, you just did a perfect push-up and you packed your shoulders down, you locked this, you locked that. You feel that now, and now you've connected the external cue to what they felt in their body, and you're like hitting save for them on that movement.
And I completely agree. And we're kind of running out of time here, but that's Lane put a link in the chat for Movement is Medicine on there. But going back to what we were saying at the beginning, guys, you know, with cueing, your job as a trainer is to get people in the proper position and to make sure that they're safe, right? No injuries during session, no injuries, preventing injuries and getting results, right? So when we keep those three things in mind as we're training and as we're coaching, right, that's hugely important. That cueing becomes a very important part of what we're doing. And yeah, external cues, learning external cues is a matter of just learning them as we shadow. So Antonio, to answer your question, yes, you're going to learn some as you shadow, but I would also use the resources that we've given you: Mike Boyle, Dan John, Todd Durkin, Brendan Rearick, Kevin Carr, Marco Sanchez, right? Get some of those guys. Lane gave the link there for Movement is Medicine. I would use that link. You know, and because at the end of the day, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better off you're going to be, because not everything works with everybody, right? But it's your job to get the movement. Everybody can do the movement. It's your job to get them to do the movement. And that's what cueing is, right? Does anybody else have any other questions before we finish this bad boy up? We went over a little bit on time. Appreciate your patience. If you are an intern, please do not forget to either text me. I'll share my phone number on here one more time. Send me a text message, 801-419-9433, or put it in the chat, first and last name if you're an intern. Appreciate you guys being on here. Hope you have a wonderful Thursday. Go team.